On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
I know as well as you do that, siphoning off some of that investment money or that cash and putting it into hard assets like real estate or even better, multifamily can build generational wealth. But you're talking about 3 years or less. Dude, that's
Yeah.
fast.
Well, it's amazing. A lot of people think, everything is hard until you've done it. And so, I've met people that, they've left their job in 3 years and a couple of years and in 5 years. And just, it's everything's impossible until you've done it or until you see people that have done it.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. Back at you here today with another king on the stage, my brother Bronson Hill. How we doing?
Hey, what's up, Chaz? Excited to be here, man. Love what you're doing and I'm really excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. The little backstory here, back 30 seconds, but you were describing a little bit of the detail that my team puts into the pregame, and we take this thing seriously over here. We're trying to add value to entrepreneurs everywhere. I really appreciate you being here. You have a unique background, as we all do as kings, but tell us what kind of business that you have, Bronson.
Yeah, so I have a business. We do syndication, which means we raise money from retail investors. We do real estate. We've got 2,000 multifamily units. We branched out into things like car washes and ATM machines and oil and gas deals. And we also do a lot of education. I have a show called the Mailbox Money Show. Similar to this, we're providing value, providing education, and do a lot of speaking at conferences, have a book coming out, and just a lot of different, we're trying to add value to the space and help people to generate passive wealth so they don't
Yeah.
have to work for money. As Warren Buffett said, you can actually learn how to make money while you sleep. So that's what we try to help people do.
I love it, man. You mentioned your book. I'm glad you did because I was going to bring it up anyway. Give us the title because, man, I just am struck by the title. I think it actually solves the very problem that you were just saying. Because everybody listening here, entrepreneurs, we might be building business systems. I've built business systems which can be passive, but nothing quite like buying an asset like a piece of real estate and getting passive income from that. So tell us the title of the book. Tell us what you're really trying to do here.
Yeah. So, yes, my first book, it's called Fire Yourself, Replace Your Working Income with Passive Income in 3 years or Less. It comes out probably by the time this goes live, it'll be out on Amazon and everywhere. So, really excited for that. And yeah, just, that's the goal is to get someone that has only done stocks or has a money, advisor or financial advisor. Just how do I start doing these things in alternative assets and really grow my wealth in a way that I don't have to rely on the stock market, which is incredibly volatile and there's a lot of risk
Yeah.
there and just a lot of issues I found with Wall Street.
Yeah, that you are 100% right that I've never trusted that direction for a
Right.
lot of those particular reasons, but
Yeah.
even as entrepreneurs, man, like it's tough because oftentimes we can take money, put it back in our business and it gives us a greater return, right? And so there's a little bit of a hamster wheel here because at some point the business has got to kick off enough cash and you do something else with it. It doesn't mean that investing back into your business or even to another business isn't a greater return. Oftentimes it is. And that's the sticky of going, I can get a better return back in my business, but I know as well as you do that siphoning off some of that investment money or that cash and putting it into hard assets like real estate or even better, multifamily can build generational wealth. But you're talking about 3 years or less. Dude, that's
Yeah.
fast.
Well, it's amazing. A lot of people think, everything is hard until you've done it. And so, I've met people that, they've left their job in 3 years and a couple of years and in 5 years. And just, it's everything's impossible until you've done it or until you see people that have done it. And so I think
That's right.
it all starts with education. It's just, everything, I actually basically did that, right? I made a decision. I'm going to try to leave my job within 3 years and I did it in less than 3 years. And it just happened through really the two things that are super powerful for investors and I think for every entrepreneur is education and networking, right? It's getting in the room with amazing people that, there's that quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So
Right.
networking, be in the right room. I've had partnerships. I've made millions of dollars by just being in the right room with amazing people and then just getting educated, right? Whether even just those conversations or getting, reading books or doing these things. And so it's not like a rocket science thing to figure out how to do these things. It's just getting in the room with people that are at the next level because it will pull you up, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that's really how people do it. I'm sure that's what we're doing here, right? Is you're gathering people that have done next level stuff and trying to say,
Yeah.
how can we share this so that we can change others' lives and really help people get there also.
Yeah, I love the kind of depiction that you gave of the two things, their specialized knowledge and the impact of others. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich says, in order to obtain wealth, you have to have power. And in order to have power, you have to have the combination of specialized knowledge and this harmony of community. He didn't say is that exactly like that, but you can't you don't have to have the specialized knowledge, all of it yourself. I don't have to be a multifamily syndicator like you, but I can know you. And now I have the power through the mastermind, what you're talking about, of having like-minded people in a room together. I now have access to your specialized knowledge. So there's two things, the specialized knowledge and then the access to the community, which has additional specialized knowledge. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, if anybody hasn't read Napoleon Hill, we're actually going through with a group right now a book called The Laws of Success, and it's
Yeah.
like 15 different lessons and things. And he's the guy who coined the term the mastermind, right? When we have two people or more that get together and put their mind towards something, it becomes this mastermind. And he just said every single successful person that he interviewed, and people like Andrew Carnegie and Henry Ford, and all these people had this kind of network around them so they could help, with problems that came up and things like that. So I think as an entrepreneur, if you're trying to get to the next level, I think that's like the biggest thing is just, paying to be in the room, whether it's an entrepreneurs group or it's a group of just people that are really growing themselves personally, that's how we get better. That's how we grow. And that's how we really, get to any other level we want to get to, is just getting around people that are doing that.
Yeah. I think it ties back to the very first point you made is that you don't know what's possible until you know it's possible. And oftentimes stepping into the room and seeing someone else, you're like, wow, he did that. He
Yeah.
really did that. And it
Yeah.
just all of a sudden things open up to a
Yeah.
new perspective.
Yeah, it is it. I mean, I met with a guy recently a guy in the real estate space, Brandon Turner. I was having a conversation with him, and he's
Wow.
a
Yeah.
bigger pockets guy, and he was just saying like, he was in a room with, somebody was talking about how they had $100 million fund, and he's just like, that's just amazing. Could a human being like raise $100 million? And then he said like a year later, he raised $150 million in 8 weeks, right? And so like, it's just funny how like it's all just like everything's impossible until you're just like, oh wait, like it's not impossible. It's all just kind of this myth. And I've got to get around people that are doing it. I've got to start to believe it. It's all mindset stuff. And again, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm sure, you're a big personal development guy as well, but
Yeah.
like I'll have a breakthrough in my personal development and then it leads to this huge breakthrough in my business. And it's just amazing how that happens, right? So anyway, I've just been continually amazed at, the limits that I thought I had. There's really no limits there. It's just
Yeah.
simply the limits that we put on ourselves. We didn't think we could do whatever. And so I've just continued to believe like the idea of, there's this great book by Dan Sullivan, and it's called 10X is easier than 2X, right? And it's this ability to let go of who you were to become who you are able to be. And so you've got to let go of a lot of times 80% of what you were doing just to embrace
Yeah.
this new identity of somebody who is a 10X type of person, right? That's the term a
Yeah.
lot of people use, but it's just continually saying, okay, well, what needs to happen here so that I could grow 10X or I could scale in this type of way?
Yeah. Those are great questions to be asking. I think that the starting point is always the question, which you did a great job of articulating a couple there. Let's talk about you for a second here. I want to know, I mean, I want to get into some practical stuff of what you've done, your journey and stuff, but for you right now, for Bronson, what's like the deep, I mean, you've freed yourself financially. Okay. And you've helped many other people do the same now, but what's in it for you? What's the burning desire? Even if we're going to use Napoleon Hill language, what's the burning desire that drives you forward yet still today?
Yeah. So for me, I've got a couple big whys. The first one, obviously I mean, just a lot of it. These are all kind of equal. I want to be a great dad. I want to spend time with my daughter and just really, be there for her. A big kind of why below that and for financial freedom is I really want to end modern day human slavery in the world, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. I mean, there's 20 to
Yeah.
40 million people that are human slaves today, more than we've ever had in the history of the world. I mean, that's like I live in Los Angeles, and that's like 3 times the size of the greater Los Angeles area. That's just literally a human slave. And 99% of these people never are freed or never really are rescued. And so it's this big, hairy, audacious goal. So to me, so my kind of, that's really, those are kind of my end game things that I want to, I want to be a great dad. Obviously I want to travel, I want to do these things that I value, but being able to help people become financially free is incredibly empowering for them. Because I mean, most people, if
Right.
you look today, something like 65% of people hate their jobs. They don't like what they do. They don't like, and even a lot of people
Right.
that have a business, they thought they'd enjoy it, but they kind of they do it because they have to do it. versus you're doing something that you feel like you have a sense of purpose over. So to me, like, yeah, I don't have to work. I don't have to be doing all these things, but I want to because I want to have people experience what that's like to be free. And so many people, like I said, are just stuck in something that they don't want to be doing, and they don't have the space to be able to create that. And so, I work with a lot of high net worth people, a lot of people that make a lot of money, but they don't know how to make money passively. They don't know how to actually grow wealth. Wall Street can, over the long term, can generate some wealth, but it doesn't really generate income. It doesn't really generate cash flow typically. And so, and it's very volatile. And so finding ways that you have businesses that pay you, to hold them, and there's an inflation hedge built in, all this learning, it just creates so much life change. So for me, I think it's being a part of the cause I believe in, being able to be the person I want to be and helping other people to transform and be the people they want to be. That's, I think, what gets me, all those things get me really excited.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can tell you've thought about it. Appreciate the answer there and the detail behind it, because I don't know. I think that there's, you're probably a detailed person just based on that answer, but there's work that goes into what wakes me up beyond the money, because once you have the money, it's like, well, what now? Yeah, of course, be a good dad, like that makes sense. Yep, be the person that you're designed to be. But the impact of that person is what you're describing now as freeing people. Wow, that's quite a mandate. That means people are like
Yeah.
waiting on you to emancipate them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big deal. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, I think a lot of people, we don't realize what life could be like. Right. And I think it even kind of comes back to my faith of, with faith in God. What does it mean? Right. The idea of, what am I here to do? What's my purpose? I think that we're at our best when we're doing what our passions are. I mentioned Dan Sullivan, who, has written some different books, but I'm a part of this group called Strategic Coach. They talk about this thing, a unique ability, right? What's your unique ability? You do it, you have a legendary skill there. And also, when you do it, there's an excellence, but there's this passion that's there, right? There's only so many things you're passionate about. And that's one thing my dad actually taught me is that, you're not passionate about everything. You don't have interest around everything. If you have a passion, that's kind of a God-given thing that you've got to pursue it, because not everybody loves, fighting human trafficking or doing investing or whatever. So like, or talking with people, I've had 1,500 one-on-one phone calls with high net worth investors over the years. And it's like, I just I get so curious and it's so interesting and I love doing that.
Yeah.
Right. But not everybody does. Some people would rather be like taken out and shot or something than they're going to go to the
Yeah.
dentist or something than if you're
Yeah.
a dentist. I don't mean to be offensive, but we got to find out what our passion is. And when we can just do that in our business, that's where we really grow substantially. And he says, if we can be doing in our unique ability in our business. So, there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening as well. We can be doing somewhere between 60 and 80% kind of in our unique ability. That's huge, right? If I can get to where I'm just doing the things I'm really passionate about and I'm really good at, you're going to produce exceptional results.
Yeah. How does one listening right now, I mean, okay, so everything you just gave to us was really juicy. I love it. It feels good. And we can take it, we can write it down in the notebook but what do I do with that? I'm listening right now, this guy named
Yeah.
Bronson on this crazy podcast, and I pull over and I write down everything that you just said. I reverse it back and I write it down word for word. What am I going to go do with that later today or tomorrow or this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I think that's something that, a lot of times, Michael Gerber talks about this, in the ebook or the E-Myth Revisited says, a lot of times we spend time in our business, but we're not working on our business. And part of that too is I think is really stepping away from the business. So what I do is with ideas like this that come up, I literally have a note that I make and I put it in an Evernote or somewhere and I'll say, well, this is something I want to come back to. I want to come back to this idea and I want to have time where I get a whiteboard up and I do this. And I do this religiously. Every 90 days, I get away for 2 days or 2 nights, and I'll basically just spend time thinking about the business, thinking about what is working, brainstorming. Okay, what worked the last 90 days? What didn't work? What should we? Is there anything new we should create? Do we need to hire anybody? Do we need to fire anybody? Well, what are the things that need to happen that need to go into our business? And so
Yeah.
I think those are a couple things. A lot of this mindset stuff is great, but yeah, you're right. How do you actually implement that? So I think you have to have time. Henry Ford used this. He said, thinking is hard work, which is why so few people do it. Right. And so a lot of times we're in our business.
Powerful.
It's not that we're not thinking. It's just we're kind of doing what we do and we're thinking whatever, but we don't take time away to say, well, let's take these ideas and just figure out, okay, if I really want to scale it, if I was going to go 10x right now, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 ways I could do that? right?
Yeah.
And you're actually kind of dreaming. You're in that kind of state of what does this actually look like? So all these ideas and things and quotes and whatever, those are things that you come back to where you, as you wrote it down, like you said, you pulled over in the car, you wrote that information down. What are the things I can take and how, can I give myself space to schedule to brainstorm around in my business, in my life? How can I let those
Yeah.
things that I value become a reality?
So good. That's actually the answer to any piece of information, any idea. So I'm glad you gave a holistic answer there. Being able to capture it and then later work it out so that it can be implemented. And you might find out later in one of those sessions that it was a good idea, but it's not for you or not for you right now. And you put it on the back burner or you get rid of it or you implement it. And so I think that time gap, between, oh, I heard an idea or I heard this awesome guy on a podcast telling me this great thing I wrote down, from that moment to implementation is probably the difference maker in most high performers. Would you agree with that, or do you have a different perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I feel like to be, a lot of us, didn't start their own business, at age 18 or 19, and just, where we had other experiences. I was medical device sales for 10 years. I'm not sure your background, but we had different things that we've done, different things in different businesses, and so,
Right.
we come to this with different skill sets. But I think, the ability to kind of to be somebody who is a visionary and also someone who can implement, right? And obviously as we get bigger, there's, some of the EOS stuff which talks about the visionary and the implementer, that relationship between those two. So eventually you get big enough, you have an implementer that can kind of take your great ideas as a visionary and actually implement them. Now in the beginning, you've got to really find a way to do both. And it's challenging, right? It's challenging to be like, I've got bigger dreams, I got bigger visions, and I want to spend time living in kind of, I don't want to say dreamland, but you're in a land where you're just continually thinking that, hey, anything's possible. It's all here. You're ideating, but then you have to be real. Okay, rubber meets the road. What kind of customer service am I getting here? Or this issue here is not working. Or on my team, like I'm very visionary, so I've had to really incorporate a lot of people that are really good with follow through. They're really good with data. That are really good because that's not my strength, right? And I don't want to get stuck on that stuff anyway. And so I think as you are able to do that, it is so important to have both
Yeah.
because if you're all visionary, you're never going to get anything done, and if you're all just in, just kind of in the weeds and getting in it, you're never going to grow. So it's kind of this weird kind of going back and forth, right? From dreaming about what it should be, and also like, well, let's just implement this. Let's stop talking about. It, let's just do it.
Yep.
And I find that's a challenging balance.
Yeah. Inside of the mastermind group side of Gathering the Kings, there's a lot of, first off, there's a lot of doers. Doers want to be better. So they put themselves in rooms like you talked about. But even inside of that, then it's like, then the armor can come off. You can be real, which then now it's communication, it's ideas, it's a little bit of just, problem solving. What you're saying though is that when they leave that room, you still have to go do the thing that you learned or do implement the thing that someone else gave you the idea for. And so it still comes down to I can come in and I can be a visionary, and then I have to either go communicate to my team so they can implement, or I have to go do it myself. And either way is okay. Again, it's that timeline gap between what you're saying. I think is beautiful. Switching back over to real estate here, because obviously that's your superpower on freeing people with passive income. What would you say, going back to your journey, you were medical sales rep, you wanted something different? Like why did real estate appeal to you as a salesperson?
I've always been interested in being an entrepreneur. Since I was, in college, I was interested in, starting a business or doing something on my own. Sales, and I was a well-paid medical sales device rep, meaning I would go into surgery and heart surgery and help physicians, and kind of coach them on how to use their devices, which was kind of a cool thing to do.
Wow.
Very interesting. I was making over 200K a year. And I got it down. I was working about 30 hours a week or less. And so, my family especially was like, "Why would you ever leave your great job?" Like it was these golden handcuffs, right? Jazz was like, "Why
Yep.
would you?" And so, but to me, I really wanted financial freedom. And again, when people say financial freedom, when I started to really define what that meant for me, it really meant freedom over my time. I wanted to be able to
Yeah.
take a day off and go spend time with my daughter. I wanted to be able to, I just got back from Japan 2 days ago, right? I'm going on another trip tomorrow. I really enjoy being able to create and being able to have the time and space to be able to do that. And so, actually I was sitting, it's interesting. I left my corporate job a couple years ago, and I remember it was, I had these, if anybody's worked in sales, they can relate with this. I had this call from a manager, every quarter, hey, at the end of the quarter, hey, are you going to sell any more widgets or what's going on? And so I pictured myself getting that call a couple months after. It's kind of what the end of the quarter would have been. And I just remember, what came in my mouth was, thank God I'm not doing that job anymore, right? So I have this freedom to be able to do it. But, for me, the idea of really being able to create something, I knew I would regret it if I didn't do it. There's a
Yeah.
quote that says, at the end of your life, you'll regret more the things you did not do rather than the things you did. And so I thought, I could try this and, it could fail. But, if it fails, I could always go back to medical sales. And regardless, I would regret if I didn't do it because it's in my heart. And it's just, when I did that, it actually, all these other things kind of started opening up. And I realized like, wow, it's just, all this is
Yeah.
just a story. All my limitations are just a story that I've told
Yeah.
myself. And it's all possible. It's all right here.
Yeah. I love that. What would you say? I mean, the freedom of time, really, because like you said, it wasn't necessarily money choices. 200K, similar situation where I had family going, "Wait, you're leaving? What?" Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I get that. And so I guess what I'm trying to do is paint the picture for the listener right now. And maybe they've already left their corporate job, but what they have is a business where they're actively building and they're earning income. Okay, great. So that's active income. It's good, even if they've built a business system where they've got a team and process in place and it seems a little bit more passive. It's still different than real estate. And so why would someone like that even what would the value for them would be for investing either with you or just in real estate in general? Like what's the pull for them? They've already left their corporate job. They're doing it themselves, but it's still active is my point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of times if we look at how we spend our time, and this is actually a lot of the people we work with have a business, but they just don't quite know how do I start doing the passive income thing, right? Passive
Right.
income, a lot of people think passive income is okay, great. I have a rental house. I've got 5 rental houses. I got 10. I have people that have had 50 rental houses. And then it becomes another job, right? Even if you have a property manager, you're still managing other stuff. So there is a point where deals become more passive. Now, it's never fully passive. No one ever really cares about your
Right.
money the way you do. But, when you have a deal, for example, let's say we've got a 200 unit apartment complex that we're doing, our investors will look at it. They'll vet the deal. They'll vet our team. Okay, we'll have a call, whatever. They'll have a sense. Okay, I think this. I understand the business plan. I feel like I understand the risks here, and then they'll choose to invest 100K or whatever amount they want to invest. And then from that point, it basically becomes passive. They are not the ones getting calls from the manager saying, "Hey, we've got an issue with the tenant. They didn't pay, or the toilet's not working, or whatever." So I tell people this that if your current strategy, you couldn't 10x what you're doing. I guess we're using a lot of 10x on this show, but if you have 3 rental houses, if you couldn't immediately go to 30 rental houses,
Yeah.
then you're not using a passive strategy. You're not using a scalable strategy. And that's where a lot of people, I think, they just think, oh, you're right. I have all these houses, or I've got a small multifamily, whatever. I couldn't really scale it up because it's just too much work to acquire, to manage, it's just too much to do that. So that's where people getting passive, where you get the same or better returns often, and you don't actually have to do the work, right? So that's the appeal. So the idea of Warren Buffett, learning how to make money while you sleep. So a lot of times we've learned how to do this in our business, where we hand things over to other people, but in our finance, we haven't really learned how to do that. But that's where when people are making a good income, whether through their business or their job, or maybe a doctor or whatever, it's like, well, if you just took 10, 20%, you started investing. You don't take it all, but you put a little bit in. Over
Yeah.
time, it's like a muscle you develop. And over time you realize, man, I actually can do this. And then when the cash flow starts coming in, people are like, wow, this is really amazing. I actually could leave, my business, my job, whatever, and have income coming in. And that's something that for a lot of people, they haven't figured out how to do that part of it. So that's the part
Right.
that we teach people how to do.
Yeah, I think that there's chatter about it, right? Like they've heard how I could do it or how it is being done. But like you said, there's a gap there in understanding. And so then therefore there's a gap in belief. Again, going back to the very first thing that you said is you don't know that it's possible until you know that it's possible. Everything's impossible until you know that it's possible, I guess is what you said. So do you feel like it's just education that gets them to that place of like, oh, this is how I do it? And so, again, listening to a podcast with you or getting on a call with you, learning about a deal, are there other elements that you facilitate as well to help them kind of get to that place? Tell us more of the equation.
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to the two things of, the networking and education, getting in the room. I think, we actually have an event coming up in October in LA. It's a, 2-day event where we'll have 250 people there, and it's, investors. It's not, nothing's being pitched there. But one of the most transformational relationships I've found for somebody who wants to be a passive investor is connecting with other passive investors, right? So as much as I want to educate and help people, whatever, I'm an operator. We do deals. We have our ATM fund. I love all these things. I want everybody to do our deals, right? If you meet another passive investor, there's nothing to sell. They're just simply out there. Hey, I've been doing this for 10 years, for 20 years. I'm just here to help people and network. And maybe you'll bring me a deal. Maybe I'll bring a deal. And there's such a collaborative relationship. It's a
Yeah.
very transformational person to connect with. So I find getting in the room with those people, it's really powerful. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, like I mentioned, you can have all the information in the world about how great these deals are. You can have all the education. You can look at them. You can look at everything. A lot of times people get stuck in analysis paralysis where they don't actually make a decision to invest because they can tell you actually wire the funds for 50K, 100K, whatever. It's all just a great idea. And then once you do it, you'll get in, you'll see, and it's not all like a bed of roses. Oh, this just happens and it's always up and to the right. There are issues that happen. There's things you learn. There's things you learn about yourself. There's things you learn about deals and operators. But that's really where the learning happens. And the biggest investment we make really is in our own education. And I think it's as we may take the action to invest, that's where we start getting feedback, right? That's where we start learning, okay, I like this asset, or, I don't like this operator, or, you know what, I did this, but I'd rather do this type of thing here. And so it's the learning. It's not that it's going to be perfect every single time. And if I lose money, I'm a failure. Or if it doesn't go, I don't get 15% per year, I totally failed. It's like, no, it's all learning, right? So I've made a lot of money. I've also had deals that have lost money, right? So but it's the learning that happens in the process of that. I think it's the most valuable.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Yeah, you did a great job there. How do you think, tell me a moment where that realization came to your mind, where like you saw, passive investors connecting with each other, the power of that, because it's the same thing that's happened inside of Gathering the Kings. Like I can bring coaching, I can bring strategic partners, I can bring education, and all that's super powerful. But a lot of times the best part of the event or even our online spaces are just them being able to talk to each other, them meaning entrepreneurs. In this case, it's investors, but it's still the same thing. It's a peer-to-peer. I want to help you, and there's nothing attached to it. Like, tell us a moment in time here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I think, in general, having so many calls with investors, I remember there was a call I had with a guy, I'll call him George. He was a physician, net worth. We asked, what's your net worth? And this net worth was over $5 million, only done stocks, owned a medical practice. And, for this guy, just seeing he had never really done it. Right. And then, seeing all these people that, a lot of times we'll get people that have had a ton of experience passively investing. We'll get somebody like George who has no experience. Right. So for me, it was really exciting to see George get involved in a deal, to start investing, to almost have a call or email or follow, I don't remember what the follow-up was, but it'd be like, hey, this really works, kind of that sense of like, and start investing in more deals, right? This stuff actually works. And so that's, I think the most exciting part for me is when someone goes from, oh, hey, I tried this to like, oh, wow, I'm actually getting cash flow. Oh, wow, I'm actually reducing taxes. Oh, wow, I'm actually like this stuff really works. And so it's something that they say the biggest sale you make is you sell yourself, right? You sell yourself on something. And
Yeah.
so when I see that happen, and it's like, you can say how great, passive investing is, but until someone actually gets involved and they see it in a deal, they see the cash flow, they see the process, and they're like, they get excited, right? And that is something that, to me, I think that's the most exciting part of all of it, is seeing when they switch from, it's almost like in a movie, right? You have the character development. They start out, they're a certain way. They have some significant thing happen. Well, this is a significant thing that happens to where now they're an advocate for doing this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have some of those moments too, where people just along the way, and I can think of multiple mastermind members as well, but it's like they have hope, right? So he came to the event, or he did the initial deal because there was hope. He didn't really know. He's a little bit skeptical, but he was hopeful. He at least had enough trust to make the initial investment. And then you start getting around some of the people, you start getting some of the returns, you start getting some of the value, whether it's taxes or just, meeting people, whatever it is. And you're like, oh, it's actually like what they told me it was going to do. Like, this is amazing. And the unfortunate part about that, maybe talk about the black eye in your business, but in any business, there's always the people who are going to talk one thing. And then when you get in, it's like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not at all what it was supposed to be, whether it's a mastermind group, whether it's a syndication deal, whether it's really anything. And so talk about that for a half second, because I'm sure you have investors that come to you. They're like, either a deal went south or it was not how it was supposed to be. And they want to do it. They believe, but they're just a little hesitant to give the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's interesting now. I mean, it's we've had some challenges with the interest rates, right? So real estate, and anybody's in real estate right now, there's some challenges there when you go from basically a 0% federal rate to a 5.5% over 18 months. That's
Yeah.
significant, right? And
Yeah.
so
Big.
even when people go to buy, even if you do a great job of the property you have, somebody goes to buy, they typically can't afford the metrics that you were planning on of what they were going to afford to buy this. So there have been some operational challenges. We've had a deal or two that have really struggled, right? So I think it's kind of eyes wide open. There is things that, don't go according to plan. And actually every deal, and I always tell investors,
Yeah.
hey, things typically don't go exactly as planned. You'll have some areas of the same deal that, go better than expected, some that go worse, some that go about as expected, but it's all in one deal, right? So it's never exactly the way that you would hope. So I think in the middle of that is, you're looking for, in any deal, and we talk about this in the book, Fire Yourself, talk about how do you vet any deal, right? And it's basically, you have to really get to the bottom of the deal, make sure you understand the deal itself. Warren Buffett says, we never invest in anything we don't understand. If you don't understand how it works, there's two
Yeah.
parts to that. One is, how will I make money doing this? And what's the one or two primary risks of how I could lose money? And if you feel like you don't understand the risks, then you don't understand the deal well enough, because every investment has risks. And I ask other operators when I have a call, I say, because I passively invest as well, I'll say, well, what do you think the primary risk of this? What are the couple of primary risks for this? And I hear what they say. A lot of it is a different one than what I thought, right? So I'll take all that information. So I think it's, there is, you could have a deal that goes way better than expected, and then you have one that does way worse than expected, and then you have other deals that kind of do average, and you're still going to turn out fine, right? So it's this kind of
Yeah.
thing of like, you don't have to be perfect. It's funny. We'll have the stock market
Yeah.
goes down by 30%. Everybody's like, oh, okay, well, stock market goes up and down. If you have a private deal, it's like, oh my gosh, we're down, or we had a loss of 20%. It's like, it's the end of the world. Oh my gosh, I'm a failure. It's like, well, no, you're
Yeah.
not. Like, it's just our mindset, right? It's just, again, it's a mindset
Yeah.
thing of how we look at it.
I love the even keel approach. I mean, inside of mindset, I agree with you. What are some of the building blocks to that though? I mean, we're talking about emotional intelligence. We're talking about controlling thought, a lot of really deep, you know, mindset stuff that you're talking about. How did you get there?
Yeah. So again, I never met a quote I didn't like, but I do like quotes. Warren Buffett, greatest investor, he says
Yeah.
this. Somebody asked him, "What's the best like quality of an investor? What if somebody has this quality, it makes them a successful investor. And if they don't," and he said the number one quality is your temperament, which I thought was a very interesting response. Right? If you're somebody
Mhm.
that loses their crap every time something happens, and oh my gosh, whatever, right? It's like investing passively may be a little challenging for you, right? But I think in life, if you can have a stable temperament, that, okay, this happens here, and you can kind of talk yourself through it. It's not that I don't get upset or things don't happen, whatever, but if you can realize, hey, we're going to do this, and, things are going to go well in certain areas, they're not going to go well in other areas. But I think just in general, I mean, the human bias is, it's negative, and it's very risk averse, right? So there's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a psychology book. It talks about, we remember losses, at least 2 to 3 times as much as we were regained. So if I lost $100,000, that would be the same as me. I remember the same as gaining $200,000 to $300,000, right? I would try to avoid a loss as much as possible. But again, if you have an equal thing of like, you're in a scenario where, if it's 50 chance, you're going to make, 200K, but there's a 50 chance you could lose 100K. You should take that all day, right? Because it's a better, now obviously, this is a unique investment I'm describing, because, that's usually, they're not quite that binary.
Yeah.
It's either this or it's this, but
Yeah.
again, we're just very loss averse. So again, it's really being able to manage your own temperament, step back from something and say, okay, what is the deal? What does this actually look like? And if you can, again, really manage your own temperament and then really develop that, because I think just in life, I think that's a very helpful thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the better you can control that, the better decisions that we make in general, not just investing, but also in your family, also as a dad, also in my community. So I think that's a win for everybody. let's talk about just something that's gone wrong. I mean, we've kind of mentioned it, maybe a couple bad deals, but what I mean is like a particular decision that you made, maybe in building the business, where you just stay far, far away from this one thing. What is it?
Well, I think what comes to mind, this isn't necessarily about my business related to my business, but not exactly. So when I first started, getting into investing, I was looking at all different things. I was like, I would take Friday afternoons and I would just go to like a Starbucks and just brainstorm ideas. And this is what I was doing the medical sales stuff. And I had a little bit of time and space to do that. So I was going to start like a mouth guard company that you could, people could get night mouth guards that are
Yeah.
custom and they'd mail. And so I just, exploring different ideas. And I had this strategy I came across that was an options trading strategy, dealing with stock options, which if anybody's traded stock options, there's some technical stuff there. And I had this strategy that I kind of learned. I got some training on it, learned it. Okay, this is what I'll do. And so I started doing this. And my net worth at the time was about like maybe 250K. It wasn't very high, but I basically had this strategy I was making, I made about $20,000 over a 3 or 4 month period. And then in one day, I did something where I didn't work the system correctly. I would have had a small loss, but I ended up not doing it. I just, I remember I was outside, I was wearing my medical scrubs and coming out of this hospital and looking at on my laptop in the parking lot of this hospital. And I realized, oh my gosh, I just lost $70,000 in one day. So I went from, making, 20,000 to now I had, it was a loss of 70. So I basically had a loss of, a total loss for that whole period of about, 50,000. But to lose 70,000 in one day, that was a hard day when that was over about a third of my net worth. And
Yeah.
so I think what I realized from that, nothing is a failure. That's one thing I've learned is that nothing is a failure. It's only we define it as a failure or not, right? What I learned, right? It's either a success or it's a seminar, right? So that was for me that day. That was a seminar, right? I got a $70,000 lesson that I'm not a great options trader, right? People that are options traders
Right.
too, usually they're really good at like the technical thing. They're like engineering mind and checklists.
Yep.
That's not me. That's not my best seat at the table, right? I'm a much better work with people, look at the big picture, get a feel for people, the deal, that's the kind of stuff I love doing, being a deal maker versus I'm the guy technically working this so I'm giving kind of a long-winded answer here, but I think,
That's
the
good.
takeaway is, don't look at things as losses when you make a mistake or you go through something. You just use everything to learn. And an example of this, I have a friend who was buying, houses somewhere, something went wrong. He had bad tenants. And they cut literally 2 or 3 of his houses got trashed. And it was really a choice he made to not have a legit property manager, new background checks, whatever. I mean, it's something but I think he defined that as, hey, well, I'm a failure because these things happen, right?
Right.
Versus that, well, here's a lesson here, right? I see a lot of people get derailed because they take things really personally versus no, this is all just information. It doesn't define me. It doesn't define who I am. It's just, I can take this and learn, okay, what the lesson here is this. And it was, I'm not good at this. Okay, well, let's not do this. Let's do this over here, right?
Yeah, you mentioned psychology. There's a book called Learned Optimism, and it breaks down really three kind of ways of thinking that spiral people out of optimism: permanent, pervasive, and taking things personally. Basically, you've kind of touched on some of those things here, but if you can manage thoughts and emotions, like you talked about a few minutes ago, then you can have this. I don't take things personally. Things are not permanent. Things are not pervasive, and what that means is that it just is what it is. And
Yeah.
then to your last point, is I get to define it actually. And not just failures. I get to define everything. I can define every single situation and I can add value to it or I can ascribe value to it or I can not. And I can just say it's not valuable at all. It's like I was watching a video. This was several months ago of Alex Hormozy, and he was on a podcast talking about, trauma. He's like, 200 years ago, this thing that you're calling trauma, that was regular life 250 years ago. They were just trying to survive. But you call it trauma. Is it trauma? Or is that just what you're ascribing to it?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
dude, when you realize that it's that level of control of what I can and cannot believe, then it's like you become a little bit powerful. A lot of it.
It's a good point. There's a group called Landmark that does Landmark does education courses, and they talk about this, that there's a story that we create, right? So the idea of trauma
Yeah,
or the idea of whatever it is, it's just simply a made up thing that we add our meaning to it, right?
that's right.
So, again, and I think that it became super powerful when I realized like I was living out of the story of things that happened when I was a kid, or this happened when I was 5 or 10 years old. And, I made it mean all these things that it doesn't mean. It was just an
Yeah,
interpretation that a kid makes when they're 5. And yeah, we live out of these things. And I think as entrepreneurs, we live out of these own limitations that we put on ourselves. When I realized that people that are doing things that are just super next level. It's all just they just believe they were able to do it, and they had to work through their own psychology, their own mindset to be able to get there. And so
Yeah.
I think what you're doing with your group as well, with your mastermind, something you're helping people do that, right? Helping people to get through those mind shifts to say, that's just not true, right? And I think people can tell us, but it's when we realize ourselves that like when this terrible thing happened in my life, it didn't mean I was a terrible person at all. It just mean that this thing happened. Like it doesn't mean okay, that's the fact. This is the fact that happened, and then the story. I can create the story, right? It can be an
Yeah.
empowering story, or it can be a disempowering story. But when you can
That's
create the
right.
empowerment, it's like, dude, this gets a lot of fun. This is like I can do whatever I want to do, and I can be whatever I want to be. And here I'm 40, almost 43 years old. I'm just figuring this out, right? It's awesome.
Yeah. Everything's impossible until you know it's possible, right?
Mhm.
And
That's it.
isn't that how you started it? I got a question. I'm going to switch gears here. I'm going to get a question for you about family. You've mentioned your daughter several times. Obviously, family's super important to you, and time frame. Passive investors are always talking about, time freedom, and often that leads to family and other things. But as entrepreneurs, not so much necessarily investors, but as entrepreneurs, we're always building and we're obsessed. Like, let's just be honest. We only know how to be all in or all out. And so I don't like the word balance. I like the word obsessed. Clearly, you figured out how to maybe be obsessed on the time frame with your family. But my question is, practically, how have you been able to obsess over both? You're still doing deals, even though you have time freedom. You're still doing other deals. You're still building. You're still obsessing over growth and net worth, and but yet you're still obsessing over your family at the same time. How are you doing that?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a good question. The term balance is a hard term. Like, how do I don't know, like you said, it doesn't really exist. I just try to incorporate, okay, how do I live the things I value? How do I bring, is there a way with my daughter? Can I bring her into the business? Can we do things together? And, I found a
Right.
couple ways to bring her. She's 10 years old, but, she was shooting thumbnails for me a little while ago of like, here's, just getting pictures of me in different ways. We can use these
Yep.
for YouTube or different things.
That's right.
So to me, I try to, I'll have goals. Like I'll have goals that I create for the year. So I usually go away at the end of the year for a little bit just to try to create those annual goals. I read them every single morning. One of my goals this year is to take her camping twice this year, right? Which isn't a ton, but it's like it's enough. Okay, we haven't really done a lot of camping. We've been once this year. We've got another one planned for next month. And also with travel, I've been traveled 5 times internationally this year. I've got another one, a couple week trip to New Zealand. So how do you do the things you value doing? So I think it's just getting on the calendar, saying, hey, this is what I want to do with my daughter. I wanted to get her into some sports. So she really wasn't super excited to be anyway. I signed her up for soccer, and then she found out she really loves it. But to do that, I had to we didn't sign up quite on time. We signed, I guess it was kind of really ahead of time to sign up. So we signed up a little late. So I had to volunteer to be a ref, right? So I've never refereed anything. Here I'm like, now I'm a soccer referee. I'm gonna be up here calling with a whistle and making signals. And, but part of that, part of it was I actually embraced it because I was like, well, I wouldn't normally choose to be a soccer ref, but here's an opportunity to grow and learn something. And I get to spend time with my daughter, and it's another
That's
thing we
right.
get to do together. So I think it's again, cutting things out of your life to value to do the things you value. And it's again, continue looking at, I'm just looking at my schedule, right? What is on my schedule that doesn't need to be there? What is something I
Yeah.
can give that over? It's the who, not how. Who can be doing that for me so I can
Yep.
spend more time with my daughter, go kicking a soccer ball around, or I can travel, or I can do these things that I want to do. And to me, the travel is really motivating. Hey, if I can write this book, or can I get this done on the plane on the way over so that I can really enjoy my time when I'm in Japan or I'm wherever I'm
Yeah.
at, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, I loved actually the piece there that you said around not only it's just optimizing the things that you want or that living your values, but it's also cutting away the things that maybe don't. And that's not necessarily cutting away the things that you don't value. It's just that the things that maybe someone else could do, because it's both and. Like you do need to cut away the things that you don't value. That's step one. But eventually, you cut away the things that you still have value in or find value in, but someone else should be doing those things, and it frees up then the more valuable piece, which is
yeah,
in this case your daughter.
that's it.
What do you think is the thing that holds people back from doing that? I mean, you gave us some practical things on calendar and living your values, but someone's listening right now going like, "Ugh, I know I need to be doing these things, but they're stuck."
Yeah.
What's holding them back?
Yeah, I have a friend who runs a business, a good friend I go to church with, runs a business in his 50s, has 100 plus employees. And, he goes through seasons where it's like, I can't even reach him. He's just like for sometimes months at a time, they don't come back, whatever.
Right.
And I'm just thinking like, I don't know that that's the right way to structure. And it's not wrong. He can just structure whatever he wants, but
Right.
that's not the way I wanted to do it. And that's where I
Right.
found things of like a self-managing company, the term a self-managing company, where I'm not needed in the business. And sometimes you'll meet people that
Yeah.
have 5 businesses. I'm like, well, how do you have 5 businesses? Well, I've got managers of all the businesses, right? And if you really think about it, a business should be able to run without you. Now, I have a business that my business is called Bronson Equity. It's like around my name, right? But even that, I believe that I don't have to be doing all this stuff. I want to be involved in the content creation and stuff. Like that's the stuff I really
Right.
enjoy. Right? That's the stuff I want to be
Yeah.
doing. I want to be doing the strategy and that stuff. But the other stuff I don't want to be doing. And so as I grow, so I think it's just I think it's this false belief that I've got to do this, right? And so it's the who, not how. It's like I've got this problem. How can I solve this problem, whether in my personal life or in my business? And really, the better question is who is going to solve this for me? And I think it's just continually believing that that's true. And I'm just looking at my list here. It's like, I've got another role I need to hire. And I'm like, well, I want to give some of that over. I've got to get to a place where I can trust that someone's going to do it. It's going to take a little more work to get them trained up and do it. There's going to be a
Right.
cost involved with that. That's a very high paid role. But when I can do that, that's going to lead to a lot more freedom for me. Right. And so it may not be the place to do that, but that's how people get more freedom, right? Is they figure out, okay, where's my time going? What am I doing? There's actually a great book about this called Buy Back Your Time. And it just talks about that. How do you actually buy back your time? And then you just, okay, I'm doing this. Well, I don't want to be doing this. Well, how do I teach this and have somebody else do this?
Yeah. Super powerful. Bronson, I want to go to one more question, a little different angle here. I want to know if you had the opportunity to whisper in the younger Bronson's ear, what would you tell him?
I tell them just, take the biggest, I should say the biggest risk. Take more risks. To be willing to try harder, bigger. Don't stop because you've never done it. Don't just go out and try to change the world right away. Because if I'd started at 20 or 25 or whatever, it'd just be so much further along. And so it's just again continue to go after the bigger things that you think you never could do, or just pay to get in rooms of people that are far ahead of where you are right now.
Yeah, I think that those are really powerful. And I liked how you said, yes, you'd be further along. I mean, of course, we could always, change a couple things and be further along, but the impact of, that decision would be just probably that you just would have gone for, or you just would have been maybe more fulfilled, even just like the result of the going for it just could have happened sooner. And it's courage actually. What comes through that is go for it.
Yeah.
Don't
I
hesitate.
think yeah, I think it's courage. Yeah, I think it's, and we're not all in a place where we can just do that, right? If somebody's listening, like, hey, I've, got my business, or, you have 3 kids at home and your spouse doesn't work, or, there's different seasons we can
Yeah.
do it. But I still think, a lot of times there's things we can do, especially, if you're married, you can enroll your spouse and, hey, is this something I could do on the side for this season of time to help create this bigger thing, right? So I was
Yeah.
able to do that where I left a job where I spent 30 hours or 23 hours a week doing the medical sales stuff. Then I spent 30 hours a week plus doing real estate stuff over a couple of year period. I was able to leave by doing that. Right. And so
Yeah.
that opened up opportunity. So I think it's, again, there's the only risk in that is that I spend my time and my efforts and maybe some money doing this. But at the end of it, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn this either works, it didn't work, or maybe I should shift over here. You're going to meet amazing people and it's going to produce a ton of growth. So that's the stuff that I love is just really continuing to allow ourselves to become a better version, to try different things. And I think it's the part where we don't allow ourselves to try and fail. That's difficult. When I left my job, I want to tell a story quickly. My cousin, who's a multifamily guy who kind of got me into multifamily, he said, hey, you should read this book called Before You Quit Your Job. And it's by Robert Kiyosaki, wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, Before You Quit Your Job. And I said, well, bro, like, I'm leaving my job. Like, I don't need to read this book. I'm actually leaving. Like, what the heck? Yeah. So, but I kind of indulged him. I said, okay, fine, I'll read it. And so I read it and it basically talked about a couple things. One was, as an employee, you can't make mistakes because if you make mistakes, you'll get fired, right? That's what will happen if you're an employee. You get fired. As an entrepreneur, you have to make a lot of mistakes. You got to be willing to make a lot of mistakes
Yeah.
and quickly learn. And he describes it that being an entrepreneur is like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and trying to assemble one before you hit the ground. Anybody who's an entrepreneur can relate with that, right? Is you're just trying to figure it out. But again, it's just getting in a different mind space or mind shift. So that story came to mind. I wanted to share that.
Yeah, no, it's huge. I think that I'm glad it didn't deter you from leaving that job. You're right that really the key to success in business is the opposite of what it's like to be successful in a job. It's like, no, I want to do all the failures. In fact, I've said many times, if there's like a quota of failures, I'd rather just get them all out of the way now. Can we just do all those now so I can get to the success part? So I appreciate your perspective here today. How can the listener connect with you? They're just intrigued with following you, following your content. Obviously, you create that, or they're looking for a place to invest. How can they get connected with you?
Yeah, so the best way, I love connecting with folks on investing. We have this free ebook. It's called How to Use Inflation to Your Advantage. It's right here. It's 50
Love
color
it.
pages. It's at my website, bronsonequity.com. That's the best way to connect. And then you can we also have our investor club there. And then I've got our my book's coming out, Fire Yourself, on Amazon. So you can find it there as well. So really excited to be able to launch that. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll put all that in the show notes as well. Make it easy for them to not only connect with you, but also grab that book. Again, giving the strategies away for people to live free in less than 3 years, I think is not only just an incredible feat. And so congratulations, but you're doing a service to the world, man. And so I hope that you emancipate all those people that you need to free and that many people listening here today take you up on that. So thank you for being here. Blessings to your family. Blessings to all the people that you're touching here this year and next. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull
Thank
out
you
a
for
few
listening to
nuggets
Gathering
to
the
go
Kings
apply into
today.
your business.
I hope that you
right
were able to
away.
pull out a few
More
nuggets
importantly,
to
though,
go apply
I
into
hope
your
that you're
business
realizing
right
that
away.
it takes
More importantly,
more
though, I hope
to
that
be
you're realizing
successful
that
than
it
just
takes
being by
more
yourself,
to
doing
be
it all on
successful
your
than
own,
just
carrying
being
the
by
weight
yourself,
all by
doing
yourself.
it all on
What
your
I have
own,
realized,
carrying
not
the
only in my
weight all
own
by
journey
yourself.
from
What I have
multiple
realized,
businesses,
not only in my
multiple
own
different
journey
industries,
from
and now interviewing
multiple
over
businesses,
200 or
multiple
300
different
industries, and now
other
interviewing
very successful
over 7, 8,
200 or
and 9 figure
300
business owners, is
other
that
very successful 7, 8,
it's
and
tough
9
to do
figure
it
business
alone.
owners.
And
is
so
that
Gathering the Kings
it's
exists
tough to do it
to,
alone.
and so
Bring
Gathering the
together
Kings
successful
exists
entrepreneurs. In fact,
we are putting
bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact,
1,000
we are
kings,
putting together
specifically
who are
1,000
grateful,
kings, but not
specifically.
We're
who
intentionally
are
assembling
grateful,
kings,
but not
who
done.
fight tooth and nail
We're
for
intentionally
their business,
assembling
family, and
kings
communities.
who
And
fight
here's what we
tooth and
believe:
nail for their
in
business,
the family and
pursuit of
communities. And here's what
excellence
we
in
believe:
those areas,
in the
that it
pursuit of
ignites
excellence
within us the
in those
responsibility
areas,
to
that it
govern
ignites
power and
within us
forge
the
a
responsibility
lasting
to
legacy.
govern
So if that
power
relates
and forge
and
a
resonates
lasting
with
legacy.
you,
So if that
and you
relates,
know that
and-
you need
and
people around you
resonates
with
sharp,
you,
and you know
qualified,
that you need
other
people around
very
you,
successful
sharp,
business owners, I want you to go
qualified,
to
other
very successful business owners. I want you to
take a
go
look at
to
what we're doing and see if it makes sense for
gatheringthekings.com.
you to be part of.
Take a look at what
our
we're doing and
pursuit
see if it makes sense for you
to
to be part of
1,000 kings.
our pursuit
Talk soon.
to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.